Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see me and hear me. We'll just wait a little while, just before 11 o'clock, before we start going through things completely. But just have a comment from someone to say that they can actually see me and hear me. That would be great. And it even looks like we're getting subtitles coming up on my little screen as a novelty. Okay. Oh, the computer says it's 11 o'clock, so I'll start. Lovely. Thank you, Joe. Great. Today's Talking Cafe is going to be about the lockdown and its impact on people with disabilities in particular. Now, I'm a parent of an active wheelchair user, but I'm probably still not the best person, if you like, to talk about the real impact, that emotional side of things. But I've spoken to a few people and got some comments, so hopefully you'll find some of this session helpful. We'll be putting some links up, and I'm going to try and share the screen and show you a short video to explain one aspect of the issues faced by people with disabilities during the COVID crisis. Please feel free to make a comment or sort of add a thing, whether you're a disabled person yourself, about the problems you've had, the positives and the negatives would be good, or if you're a parent or a carer or someone who knows someone with a disability that's struggled or has had something really positive come out of this, please feel free to add comments. We'll try and address them as we go along. Now, we've all been impacted by the changes, if you like, and the legislation that's come in. And to a degree, we've all been sort of disabled from our normal lives, whatever normal is. And it's been a bit trying and a bit difficult at times. I mean, I'm a fairly relaxed, easygoing sort of person. Nothing worries me, but I must admit, after 3 months, it's beginning to grind me down a little bit. Desperate to get out, desperate to get back to socializing properly. Difficult, the things that we have taken for granted for so long have suddenly been taken away from us. For some people with disabilities, that has also been the case, whether it's physical or mental. For others, it's been lifelong. They have known no different. So we're getting a little taste almost of what it's like to be slightly disabled. If you consider that a definition, and the dictionary definition of a disability, it's a physical or mental condition which limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. Well, we've had our movements and activities curtailed for certain, so we've all been slightly disabled during lockdown. And it also calls it a disadvantage or handicap, especially one imposed or recognised by the law. Now, the law has a slightly different definition of what a disability is. So you're disabled under the Equality Act of 2010. You have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. COVID-19 has produced a short-term impact for us, but for a long-term point of view, it's really that definition. And because of the definition, we use the word disability, although it's not a word I particularly like to use. As I said, my son's an active wheelchair user, and his ability in certain areas is far superior to mine. He's very able with a lot of things, but obviously you can't walk and run and play football and do those sorts of things like I did, but he is, again, very able in a lot of other ways. And so for him, I asked him how the restrictions, the legislation, etc., had impacted on him, bearing in mind that he was told to shield. He actually went into self-isolation before he was told officially to shield because he recognised the risks. And so he says, for me, it's cut away a lot of my social life, as with many others. It's cancelled all of my gigs, my pool league and cricket. He plays for Somerset County Cricket Club, disabled team. And His pool is a regular evening out for him, which is good. And he does, as I say, play a lot of music. He's a very good guitarist. Health-wise, it's worried me a lot. I've been a lot more cautious about even taking the dog in the garden. We've had fun trying to get food supplies in, as many have, and in turn getting meds from the pharmacy, while still staying as safe as possible and avoiding as much contact with people. He's also found he's gained a bit of weight back, and he was working hard on losing it, using the gym, and of course now he has a massive reduction in movement because he's not out doing his pool, his cricket training and so forth. That actually he's put a little bit of weight back on quite naturally, and that's obviously a concern for him as well. And because Paul has brittle bones, his bones aren't as strong as yours and mine, that extra weight is going to add pressure to that, and is going to possibly increase the risk of getting fractures and breaks in his bones, which he wouldn't have if he wasn't quite so heavy. So he has what's called a visible disability. Wheelchair is a bit of a clue, especially as it's bright yellow and black, but not every disability under the legislation is visible. The mental impairment can cover anything from anxiety and depression right through to being bipolar, OCD, and that sort of thing. COPD and other illnesses which affect internal organs, again, clearly visible to you and I as people are walking down the street. We don't realize that they have this disabling condition which stops them doing normal activities as defined under the law. Sometimes you get a bit of a clue. You see somebody's a bit breathless, they might be badly asthmatic, getting COPD, their skin pallor is a little sort of pale, jaundice or something like that, but you can't actually diagnose the root, you just have a guess. And it's the perception of disability that causes problems rather than the definition in law very often. For those registered as blind or partially sighted with impaired sight, again, it's a huge range. Some people have what they call tunnel vision, where they can just see down through two narrow tubes in front of them. They have no periphery vision at all. You could be stood here and they may not see you. And if their hearing's not brilliant, which mine isn't, I've got 2 hearing aids. Therefore, technically under the Disabled Act, I'm classified as disabled because it's an ongoing worsening condition, but I don't consider myself disabled. I certainly don't put it down on any forms for applications for jobs and that sort of thing. With people who are blind, very often if they've got a guide dog or a cane, it's quite visible, it's quite clear, it's quite obvious. For others, their eyes may look, whatever normal is, but their vision could be quite severely impaired. And they may not see somebody stood just a few feet away from them, or they may walk up close to somebody before they actually see that somebody has stood there. The light and shade may change slightly. There was actually a nice little video made by the RNIB, which, if technology works, I'm going to share with you, and just see if we can get that going. There are subtitles as well, so bear with me, and let's just see if it plays.
How would you socially distance if this were your view of the world? Social distancing can be really challenging when you're visually impaired.
I wouldn't see someone who's approaching me very much where we're looking at a 6 feet distance.
I've literally been shouted at in the street.
I'm very limited to pretty much seeing exactly what I'm looking at.
I have a person just one nice just so I can see that I have loads of brown patches in my field of vision. Detailed vision, I want to get that shopping, but I'll have someone turn around and someone's appeared next to me just out of the lines.
There are people out there with visual limitations and just I found out, I don't know, it sounds a bit weird. Doctor was sort of there and also the circumstances of social distance. And there will be people as well who've got hidden disabilities, and you may think that they do need this. Well, that's there are people out there who are trying their best.
Okay, I thought I hate it when they do that. Do beg your pardon. Right. Okay. That, in a minute, sums up a lot of the issues for people with sight impairment and issues relating to social distancing and everything else. And it's all very well supermarkets putting arrows on the floor for you and I who can see quite clearly, but obviously the guide dog doesn't realise that the arrow is there to go in that direction. It's the same with pavements. It's really difficult for people who are visually impaired to read the signs and do other things. And there was quite a sad situation where one lady who's commented back to me said she tried to go shopping for the first time in months with her guide dog, but she didn't realise that the council had made her normal route one way, and the way that they get to the shop was going to be the wrong way, but she didn't know. She couldn't see. The guide dog obviously can't read the signs, didn't realise what the arrows were for. And as she was walking the wrong way down this newly imposed one-way system on the street, people were actually shouting abuse at her and telling her, to get off, and she's on the wrong side of the road. She had no idea what they were talking about at all. Eventually found her way to the local supermarket. Again, didn't see the signs for queues. The dog, again, couldn't read the signs, so she walked to the entrance of the shop as she would normally, and was, again, verbally abused by various members of the public, told to get to the back of the queue. Eventually, some kind person explained that there was a queue waiting to go in. It was only about half a dozen people, so she went back to the end of the queue and eventually got to the entrance of the supermarket. And there was a hand sanitizer table and things there, and a member of staff stood 6 feet away or thereabouts saying, use a hand sanitizer. And of course, she's blind. She couldn't see the table. She couldn't see the signs. She couldn't see the hand sanitizer. She didn't know whether it was one of those pump action ones, whether it's one that you push and put your hand under, whether you had to tip it. She had no idea at all. The member of staff apparently wasn't particularly helpful either. Eventually, the woman said, I just got so tearful that she broke down and told the dog to go home, and they both went home. Fortunately, a neighbour and a friend took her back later and explained the new system to her and explained and described what was happening and why people were being so rude. Although it didn't make it acceptable, at least she got a little bits of shopping that she needed. It's quite sad, really. As you saw in the film there, that some people actually have to pick a product up and put it really close to their face to be able to get that detail to read the ingredients and to read even the label. Picked up a tin of beans or chopped tomatoes, they're both red. Who knows? Then, of course, if it's not the right one, they put it back. That's frowned upon by many because you're told in the supermarket not to pick products up, not to put things back down again. And so, of course, again, they get a lot of verbal abuse sometimes from members of the public who maybe are not quite so understanding as they could or should be. The other problem, of course, is only one person from a household allowed to go in with a trolley. And if you're in a wheelchair and you've got the trolley in front of you, you can't reach the front of the trolley. You don't want to be throwing tins of baked beans in on top of your eggs, because for some reason supermarkets always put the fragile things at the beginning and the big heavy things at the end of the shop. Because of this new wonderful one-way system as well, you can't always shop the way that you would like. And not only that, as my son has found in the past, being all of 4'10", when he does get himself stood up, that he can't reach anything above the third shelf and 2 rows back. If the front row or 2 has been taken, can't always see it, and if he can see it, he can't reach it. So again, a bit of a problem there for people in wheelchairs. And if your favourite dessert is hiding up there, it's really frustrating as well. For those with learning disabilities and those sort of mental impairments around, very often have maybe a helper go shopping with them to help them choose a thing. Otherwise, they'd end up with a trolley full of Smarties and Maltesers rather than something nutritional and filling to eat. How do they get on? It's, again, another challenge. And that change in routine. Those carers were taken away shortly for a short spell. They weren't able to mix with their friends and they couldn't understand it. It really was very, very difficult for them. Other disabilities caused by anxiety and OCD, etc., have faced problems during lockdowns because there's social events, the clubs, the meetings that they have that help them deal with their world and help them so it mix and socialize a little bit better, were all stopped as the virus started to spread. And although a lot of it's gone online, it's not quite the same. You know, I find talking to clients on the phone and talking via Skype is not quite the same as actually seeing the person and talking to them face to face. Yes, thanks. Sorry, the comments are obviously making little bingling noises at me. And yes, the lady's friend was such a kind person in the high street. Thank you. The new normal, whatever it may be, doesn't take into account those with disabilities. And especially the retail sector. We've already mentioned the supermarkets and the problem with you know, the blind lady in particular. And Andrea has come up with a client with autism and found managing the changes to routine challenging. Yes, you know, people with autism in particular like things very structured. They like things to be done on a regular basis. It's Tuesday, we always have fish and chips. We always go to the cafe. We always meet up with my friend John or whatever it is. They are very fixed in their ways, and it's quite difficult and challenging for them. And obviously, if you can't go to the supermarket, you have to try and shop online. Now, I find shopping online an absolute nightmare. I hate it. The number of times I've come back with a tin of peas or something that's that big instead of a decent sized can. Or if you shop online, the inevitable, instead of a rolling pin of this size, you know, one this size turns up, so giving that to the grandchildren to play with when they're plasticine. It's really difficult, and it's quite sort of challenging trying to work out what it is actually going to look like in reality, whereas normally you would go into the shop, you'd see the little one this size, think, no, that's not what I want, and you'd go up to the next size. It's what we're used to. And of course, everybody started to shop online. Well, people with mobility issues, people who with agoraphobia, who were afraid to go out, suddenly found that their simple to get online shopping slots had disappeared overnight. 3 months, I think it took for us to get our first online shop slot. And that's in rural Somerset, you know. Goodness knows what it was like in some of the big urban areas. It must have been hugely challenging. And just getting basic foods. The other problem with online is they send it through and then at the last minute go, oh, this is out of stock. It's your Sunday joint. It's your chicken or whatever it is for your Sunday dinner. The one thing that you really wanted, or the one thing that you really needed for a decent meal, is the one thing they don't send you. You know, send a tin opener, which is you know, to replace the worn out one, but the worn out one still works, but not your dinner. You still have to go to the supermarket. Trying to buy 1 or 2 items is virtually impossible. I did do a little bit of research on Facebook, and there was actually a Facebook group called Disability Lockdown, which had quite a diverse range of people with a variety of disabilities, cerebral palsy, sight impairment, hearing impairment, wheelchair users, etc. And a couple of them got back to me with a few questions that I asked. So I'd just like to read out a couple of answers. One, you know, how has the lockdown impacted you? And the reply from the lady was, lockdown's been strange for me, as I'm pretty much locked down anyway as a severely chronically ill person. It's been nice to see activities like work, hobbies become accessible online. However, it's been bad for my mental health not seeing friends and family, and I think we've all missed that social aspect, although the hearing aids do come in handy when the grandchildren come. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Some things have continued in the local services and community. I now receive my health psychology therapy over a video call. Seriously struggle with other hospital appointments. I've had to have stupid things over a phone consultation, such as an audiology appointment to test my hearing loss. Now, I don't know, these modern mobile phones, the speakers in them are not brilliant for people like me who wear hearing aids. They whistle, they click, they're a bit hissy. How would you have a hearing test over a phone? I just beggars belief. I can't imagine how that would have been. And this is a slightly younger lady who says she lives in an elderly area as a bungalow has been adapted. And her and her husband posted a note to everyone's doors with contact details because her partner carer is disabled, computer literate, and so they could order groceries for people, etc. In fact, people just love the socialization. She says, I've actually spoken to my neighbors every week on the phone, which is lovely, especially one who's terminally ill, but they actually talk about life and how different things are, and actually physically talk to people who she hadn't really spoken to before COVID-19 struck. Now, this lady is also a bit of a blogger and has a fairly large Instagram account, oil accounts, on disabled access. And people have engaged far more with that recently than they ever have done in the past. And I think we're all being made aware of the issues that people with disabilities have. And she said, I think it's not being able to access things that has allowed people to empathise more with our community, meaning the disabled community, and our access struggles. And however, I lip read a lot during conversations in person, so struggle more over the phone. Again, if you've got a hearing impairment, you do tend to lip. You don't realise how much you lip read until somebody turns away and you're looking at the back of their head, and and there's nothing more annoying than somebody going, "What? Hey, pardon?" Yeah, it's really difficult. The last one, I asked if it changed her attitude towards society, and she said it was a double-sided feeling. She did get to catch up more with old friends, who are usually very busy commuting to work, so obviously they were home a little bit more, and it's better for the environment. However, it's been very isolating as someone who is shielding. It's been so hard to see people breaking the rules and risking everyone. Plus, my anxiety has been really high, even when I'm out with a dog and my partner and wearing a face mask. It creates this strange repetitive bubble, and I'm not able to do any of the things to break the day up, like visiting the supermarket, as it's unsafe for me as I'm shielding. And again, it is that issue and problem of socializing, mixing, and what is normal now. She summed it up with, I felt more connected to some people as I've had regular catch up with friends. However, I've been very disappointed to see how many people are breaking the rules very selfishly. Some communities have come together nicely, and I've been really surprised at how many people are willing to risk others' health. So again, the images of Bournemouth Beach and so forth just spring to mind immediately, that just how thoughtless some people can be. Now, I mentioned that my son had brittle bones, and there was a lady called Samantha Brinky, who is an actress and disability campaigner. She actually lives in East London now, but she's done a few TV commercials and a bit of TV. But what I like about her is she tells it how it is, and she's just quite happy to speak out and say things. So she has also posted up saying how she was feeling like a burden, and the response she received was pretty supportive from many of those with other disabilities and chronic illnesses who were sympathetic towards her feelings. But she says, although I have to say I was not surprised by the response, it still left her feeling overwhelmingly sad and disappointed that it's still the case for many people. And there are many disabled people feeling extremely isolated. And if we can do anything to contact them, talk to them, even if it's just a quick phone call, just to see if you're all right, please make the effort. And she says, even now during the pandemic, those feelings of being a burden have come flooding back. Those who just can't be bothered to wear a mask or social distance anymore, meaning people shielding with many disabilities and chronic illnesses, will continue. From the very moment lockdown started, there have been some who have done everything in their power to end it, meaning the lockdown, even at the detriment of people's lives. The economy trumps all. Now, as someone who is high risk, you can already see my views on this. However, this post isn't to challenge what should be prioritized, because I'm not a small business owner. I'm not someone facing homelessness, bankruptcy from the pandemic. We all have our reason for wanting things to be a certain way. This post is to address the importance of what she calls the purple pound. And this was new to me, and it's something we don't think about, and we should. And this is from someone who is a parent of a disabled person. The purple pound is the combined spending power of the disability community, and it is estimated to be around £249 billion over the year. That's an awful lot of money going into the treasury. She says it's an untapped market, and why? Simple answer: I'm not likely to spend my money in a store I cannot access with my wheelchair. I'm not likely to visit your website if you don't have ALT text or alt text. I'm not going to show loyalty to a brand if you haven't thought about the disabled consumer. And some of Sam's Mickey takes on magazines like Vogue are absolutely brilliant. If you get a chance, have a little look at Sam Renk's page. Renke is her surname, Samantha Renk. Whether or not I agree with easing the lockdown and reopening facilities is irrelevant. But if we truly say the economy is so important that I will need to continue to make sacrifices and put my own life on hold even longer, then I urge businesses and institutions, corporations to show us some respect and think about the purple pound, because our money may actually be the saving grace that you so desperately want and need. So many people obviously have gone online. And again, she gave me an example of, she went to the shop for the first time in 4 months. And she went with her mum because she didn't feel confident to go on her own. And in her little wheelchair, browsing through, thought she'd pick up a little bit of makeup just for a change. Sam, bless her, always got makeup. And she suddenly looked around and somebody was leaning right over her to pick up something from the shelf just above. And, she's quite a small lady. She's got quite a small wheelchair, but just no social distancing, no awareness of the fact that she had a mask on. The lady behind leaning over her didn't, and it just freaked her out. And she ended up asking her mum to take her home because she just couldn't cope with what she viewed as a very high risk operation of just shopping. Now, for others with disabilities, they have carers, cleaners, people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and those sorts of things. A lot of that, if they were privately funded, may well have stopped. A lot of the state ones, there was obviously cutbacks and curtailing activities that they could do. Day trips out, day centres were shut, etc. So a huge drop in social interaction for these people. And again, like the people with autism, people with dementia need that little mental stimulus to keep them going. If they don't have that, they deteriorate a lot quicker. Medical support and services were hugely reduced. People who've had heart attacks just before the lockdown were sent home, and then bang, down came the shutters. Everything concentrated on COVID-19. There was no OTs going out to houses. There was no physiotherapists going out to the houses to help these people. So you have a lot of people who suddenly life has been turned upside down. They can't do what they used to do. They can't go out. There's no public transport. There's no hospital backup. Very little social interaction. Huge impact on these people. If you feel you miss your workmates, you think about the people who rely upon that support and that help from our care industry. And of course, the dreaded online shopping slots not being available, which we've already talked about. And just general things that people with disabilities really struggle with. So I ask the question to you: has the lockdown made you view your community, the society that you live in, or that we live in, and our cultural values in a different way? Without getting into the politics of it all, have we gone back to the old socialism where we think about and care about our elderly and our disabled people, and a little bit less of I'm all right, Jack, and no, we should be watching out for others in our community? So has society become fairer will the changes that we have made recently. I've seen some wonderful voluntary work from a number of groups, including CCS, who've supported other groups, and volunteer groups who've helped us. Will this continue in the future? We'll have the schemes like Good Neighbours. I do hope that it does continue, because the vulnerable and the people with disabilities are going to need our help for the rest of their lives, and the next generation coming through will need the same. So, will disability become the new norm and treated as equal? Again, I don't want to get into the politics of all of this. There's an awful lot of focus on the Black Lives Matter. You could change that across if you want equality on the people with disabilities treating equally as well. So should we have something Disabled People Matter movement? But whatever normal life is going to be, it will certainly be slightly different from what the last few months have been. I don't think we'll ever get back to how we were. We need to help support our disabled community. Our disabled community helps support us. And as you can see, financially, £249 billion going into the economy, and the income is a huge sum of money to be going in. I don't seem to have any questions coming up through, or any more questions. Has anybody got anything they'd like to type up to say whether they've had a positive or negative experience of either disabled yourself or know somebody disabled? Please feel free to comment. You can always comment once the live session's gone after. But from my point of view, as a parent of someone who's classified as disabled, I have seen my very confident, very outgoing son become very cautious, has become very subdued. He's maintained his sense of humor, but he's not that same gregarious person that was out there gigging. In fact, we used to have to say to him, "Go home, Tina needs to see you." But he has changed slightly. It's changed him, and it's sort of changed my view as well about just how little even I know. So people who don't live with someone with a disability probably has learned quite a bit as well over the last few months. Okay, we don't seem to have any more questions, and I've rabbited on for half an hour. I do beg your pardon. I do hope that there is some useful information here. There are lots and lots of support groups out there, right through from Age UK down through to sports activity groups for younger people. There are lots of things going on. As I say, my son plays for Somerset Disabled Cricket Club. There are lots of counties have got the equivalent around and about. So if you live on the Dorset border, you might even want to go that way. There are lots of online groups as well. And as I say, the Disabled Lockdown group is one. Just Google disability groups during lockdown, and quite a little list comes up. You can find something in your area, I'm sure. Okay. And yes, thank you, Hannah, for putting those links up in the comments for me. And yes, again, Crystal has commented that son's disabled and has mobility and has declined over the period, which it will, because again, we all stay in. I'm not as fit and healthy as I was. My six-pack has turned into a party 7, I think. It's sort of one of those problems of sitting down in a chair on the phone all the day rather than being out and about, physically walking, moving, and burning up calories. I'm hoping it's not going to be too long getting back down to something, but there are lots of groups out there that can help. I'm sure gyms will still be open and be able to help people with disabilities as much as possible. But to be honest, I found going for a walk through the orchard and listening to the bird song something I did notice as somebody with a disability of sorts. When the traffic ceased at the beginning of lockdown, I could hear the bird song really, really clearly. Really nice to stand in my garden and not have the constant raw rumble of tires on concrete and tarmac going past me. And also and somebody else commented on this, that there's the smell in the air. As all the exhaust fumes disappeared. Suddenly you can smell the trees, the flowers, the grass. Not good for somebody like me with hay fever. I have to take an extra tablet now. But that sort of sense of smell came back, and obviously for the blind and visually impaired people, their sense of smell sometimes is improved. It must have been a great blessing for them not to have to smell diesel fumes and petrol fumes, and be actually able to smell, you know, nature and the trees and the birds. And yes, Crystal has said as well, there are lots of grants available to help with holidays and breaks for people. Respite is one area I forgot to mention, and thank you for that. I did have a couple of lines from a lady who, of course, once the schools shut down and the special schools shut down as well, suddenly she had to have her son home all day. Now he stays awake all night, keeps her awake all night, so she tended to sleep through the morning, get up around lunchtime, which was her breakfast, get a few bits done in the house before he came home at 3 o'clock. And suddenly he's 24/7 care, no respite at all. So she was really grateful when the school did reopen and took back some of the children, including hers. And I've got a little comment here. Don't forget about those who are blind or hearing impaired. Husband is both, and all of the changes in shops. He can't see to socially distance, and his guide dog isn't trained to socially distance. Yeah, this is a recurring theme amongst those with things. Again, that video, little video clip, is only a minute long, just sums it up perfectly. And if you think about it, the blind dog's very, very clever. But I don't think we've managed to teach any of them to read yet. So when it says one way, please cue here, the dog is going to do what it's trained to do, which is to keep going, walking through the shop safely, avoiding other people. And again, it's up to us, really, to make sure that we socially distance from those people who can't see us. We have to take some responsibility. And thank you for Steve and Eve Barrett for that one. Okay. I have basically, run out of things. Yeah, and Kath is right. It's the anxiety caused. It's the worry. People are afraid to go out. We were told for months and months, stay in, stay in, stay in, and suddenly you're told, well, actually, you can go out if you want. In fact, they're actively encouraging people to go out and spend in the shops because the economy needs repairing, apparently. It's difficult. Even my son is, yes, I beg your pardon, they're not blind dogs, they're guide dogs. Again, another error, the language we use, and I've got it in my script as guide dogs, and I've said it blind dogs. Okay, I do apologize. Yes, it's our perception, it's our language, it's what has been the norm, must change a little bit. We must start thinking a little more equally about sight impairment, hearing impairment, physical and mental disabilities. And again, I don't like the word disability. It's a different ability that these people have. But it's the barriers that are put in place, which is the definition by law that says if there's a barrier there, then it is discriminatory. And the barriers very often are as much our mental state, our attitude, as the actual physical ones, like steps, leading up to a library. You've just got a lift inside to get you to the second floor. You just can't get into the library in the first place. Crazy. So I'm going to love you and leave you, I think. Hopefully I've given you something to think about. I do hope our voluntary groups will continue to help and support. We have had disabled people in our volunteer groups helping and supporting. It's not a case of all take. They give an awful lot, and they give almost as much as they get, if not more sometimes. Okay, I will love you and leave you. Have a good weekend, and yes, blind dogs for the guide. And sense of humour is obviously vital as well. But yes, Steve, you're quite right. Blind dogs for the guide. of course they have cubs. Okay, have a nice weekend, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.